beginning some thoughts out of a book called The Creative Process in the Individual by Thomas Troward, who some people call Troward, and they're wrong, David, because it rhymes with row like J.K. Rowling. And he was one of the founders of New Thought without necessarily intending to be. He never started a school or an organization, much less a network of churches. But he was an Englishman, a Scotsman actually, a British subject who grew up in the Punjab in India, in northern, far northwest India, actually that was now is now part of Pakistan, before the division of India into a Muslim and a Hindu country, two countries there, where he learned, did Thomas Troward, the mysteries of the East, or the mysteries of the Orient, as they called them in those days. He was a lawyer and he became a judge. He became a divisional judge in the Punjab. And he studied Hinduism and he studied the mystical strains of Hinduism that later the Theosophical movement would glom onto also and bring to America. The power of the mind, the idea. There's a school of thought within Hinduism called Vedanta, and it was popularized in this country and in the West by Swami Vivekananda in the 1920s. And the primary influence of Vedanta is that the sacred is found within you and within nature. The divine is fully represented at every point. It sounds very much like science of mind, doesn't it? The divine is fully present at every point. The universe is a hologram. They didn't call it this in the 1920s, but that's what it amounts to. Everything is a piece of the all. By being a piece of the all, it does not diminish the all, so there's not the all with a piece missing, you know. And each piece, though it has a local and personal role to play, a small particular thing like a chair, which has a very simple journey in life to be a chair, nevertheless, is a representation of the entire mind of God in microcosm. And this is what you find in holographic imagery now. It would be as if you take this book I have up here and you tear off a little corner of the page and then you shine lasers through that rather than simply having an expanded or amplified little corner of a page. You have the entire book, or you have the entire corpus of this person, or you have all the wisdom of the ages represented in every particle of itself. That's difficult to wrap your mind around, but it's well worth the try. That all the wisdom of the universe is contained at every point within the universe in microcosm. And you and I make a claim on that to the degree of our willingness to do so, our preparedness to do so, our nerve, basically, to do so. We make a claim on that. We say, I can't know, it's not here, I'm somehow cut off from my good. Then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because of the operation of spiritual law. So what Troward noticed, he was called a naturalist. We just went over this in class here within the last hour of how there are 4 kinds of religion. There's natural, revealed, derivative, and syncretic. Isn't that interesting? Well, they thought it was. So you think about it. Natural religion means you observe nature and you draw certain inferences from it. We use the example there of the creative process that's triune in nature, like cause, medium, and effect. Seed, soil, plant. You observe this in nature. You observe the reproduction of animals and such nature. You say, well, I can infer certain things from this. And so there's got to be sort of a male energy and there's got to be sort of a female energy or a womb-like energy or something something like that, that then creates an offspring which in turn carries both within it, as we carry the X and Y chromosomes. This is the natural observation of things. Also the seasons, the wheel of the year, the Wiccan circles that we have here. We've got another one coming up, as David mentioned. That's a natural religion. It looks at, we look at the compass, the cardinal points of the compass in that, don't we? The earth, wind, fire, and air. We look at the turning of the wheel of the year, the cross-quarter days that exist between the solstices and the equinoxes. So that's natural. Then there's revealed, and a revealed religion is where somebody has the idea occur to them, usually brought by a supernatural presence. An angel, for example, or Jesus or one of the saints or prophets taps you on the shoulder and says, Thomas, I have a message for you, and only for you. Now you share it with the people, but you'll know where it came from. You can take credit for it, but I'm giving you this, and because you're special. And so Thomas says, I'm special, and I got this special message. And so he goes out and he starts Thomism. Or he would, but there already is a Thomism that Aquinas founded, so you'd have to arm wrestle Aquinas over that. But you get my point here, you see. And so he would start Thomism, and then it would be a thing. So that's a revealed religion, and examples of this include like the Jesus Christ Church of Latter-day Saints, for one, and Islam, because Muhammad had, in a dream state, various visitations. You can think of your own examples. And then there's derivative, which means you've got something going on, and you create something else out of it. You decide. A funny example of this from fiction is in Garrison Keillor's work, where he talks about, he said he was raised in a really, really strict evangelical Christian denomination that was also really, really tiny in Minnesota. And that's how you have to say it, Minnesota. And he said they grew out of the brethren. And the brethren were people who took, I think they were the free will brethren. They took ice baths in the winter, It was about suffering, and it was about misery, and it was about any kind of pleasure was considered just sinful, as all get out. And he said, and my people believed that they were too lenient. So my people created the sanctified brethren, and we took it up a notch, he said, And so here it was like, I can't imagine what sort of horrible things they must have done, but they believed that in the next world, that's where the pleasure comes in. See, it was about deferred gratification. A lot of religion was about deferred gratification. You suffer here, you're miserable here, you die early here, but you go there, you go to the next life. And that's where all the goodies are. That's where the buffet is laid out. Unless you believe, like this cartoon I saw the other day that has a guy standing in front of St. Peter at the pearly gates, and St. Peter says, your username and password do not match. So that's a derivative religion. You might decide that the religion you're in is not strict enough, and it needs to be stricter, or it's too strict and it needs to be more lax or something. Anyhow, it's an extension of it. Buddhism came out of Hinduism. Christianity came out of Judaism, and so on, with some exceptions. And then there's the fourth kind, which is syncretic or syncretistic. See, this is what I do when I teach a class. You three ministers take, so I don't have to have a whole other set of notes. I just repeat what I told another group. Nobody knows it except Janet, right? So, yeah, Marcia won't say though, see, because she's a pro. So, she's like, I'm cool with this. No, a syncretic or syncretistic teaching is pretty much what we are. And how do you know? Well, look at what's on the wall here. See, and they're not all, like, they're not in order of priority or importance or truthfulness or anything else. We move them around some, except Jeffrey likes the menorah behind him because he's Jewish. And we keep the two crosses at the back because, well, there are two of them and we have two walls for them. And that's the portal through which most of us entered. And the rest of these could get moved around if we were, and probably should, because there's probably cobwebs under them all. But you get the picture, right? You see? So we sample from these without cartooning them or making them silly. We take strong awareness from, I didn't really know a lot about, of this particular batch, I didn't know a lot about Shinto before we had these made and put it up. It's the second from the back on this long wall, the door. That's the door through which the ancestors pass. It's the ancestral worship done in Japan, principally. And there was a guy named Masaharu Taniguchi who took Shinto and mixed it with Buddhism and mixed it with religious science and created something called Sechonoye, or the truth of life, which is a very large teaching now in Japan and also in Brazil and also in Hawaii. And one of our own, Margot Juarez, just is, I don't know if she made it yesterday or this past Sunday, but she's going to go visit them. Because they're on Maui, and she was going to go see what Sechonoye is up to in Japan. Well, that's syncretic. That's about as syncretic as it gets, you see, where you take all of these different observations and you sample from them with respect. You have to do it with respect. It's not about just plundering stuff and making it silly and, making it all kind of, I don't know, a cartoon of itself, I guess. I bring this up because Troward was a naturalist. That was what he brought to the table. He was a scientist. He had a scientific mindset. And he looked at life and he saw the operation of certain laws. He was the one who introduced us to the terms subjective and objective when referring to consciousness. Later, Jung would pick up on this. Well, Freud and then Jung, and William James and others. But it was really Troward who began that awareness. He wrote about it, taught about it. He didn't really want to teach. He gave some lectures when he moved back to the UK. He was in Scotland, he was in Edinburgh, and he was invited to give a lecture at the University of Edinburgh in a lecture series that continues actually to this day. And that a great many wise individuals, Stephen Hawking was one of the, it's called the Gifford Lectures at the University of Edinburgh, and you can Google it, as Lisa is probably doing right now. And you'll see who all spoke. Well, he was amongst the first. William James followed him shortly thereafter. And he talked about basically science of mind to an academic crowd. And he said, so it seems to me that you have a conscious form of intellect and you have a subconscious form of intellect, or a subjective form of intellect. The one operates inductively and the other operates deductively. The subconscious operates deductively in that it takes whatever you give it and it won't question it. Much the way soil receives a seed. When the soil receives the seed, it doesn't question it. It doesn't spit the seed back to you and say, no, I'm not going to grow that for you. That's not its role. It knows its role really well, and it follows through with whatever you do give it, and it brings it about in due season. And so the idea of the subconscious mind working this way was introduced then into religion and into the Christian religion, and the hybrid Christian religion that Troward felt and believed in, with a little bit of Hinduism thrown in. But it really didn't have to be a religious sentiment at all. It was really more just straight philosophy. And then once he spoke there, well, then he got invitations to speak lots of places. And he eventually came to America and went on a speaking tour. And then there was a woman named Geneviève Berrin, who stalked him, sought him down, went to his house, banged on his door, demanded that he teach her everything that he knew. And he demurred, and she wouldn't leave him alone. And finally he gave in, and she became his one and only personal student, and wrote a wonderful little book called Your Invisible Power that kind of distills a lot of his stuff down into a short and easily grasped version. So that's a picture of Thomas Trower. The point I want to make tonight, briefly, just to impress upon you, is a statement of his where he says, we do not create as much as we reveal. We reveal something. It is revealed through us. There is a creative process that's ongoing that you didn't initiate any more than we started the seasons. Any more than we got to this earth, everything began over. No, it had been going on for a really long time. And while earth had a beginning, there's something that didn't. There's something that it issues from that never began, you see? Well, the creative process, ongoing, reveals to you that which you ought to do. And a great line that came up in our class just a little bit ago is to pray for or treat for the awareness of what you ought to do, or as we put it, what is yours to do in a given situation. How do I best reveal spiritual truth without having to reinvent the whole wheel? What is mine to do in a particular situation at this season of my life, at this season of the world's life? As you ask yourself this, a lot of unnecessary stuff falls away. A lot of talents and abilities that have lain dormant in you expand. And you become passionate and engaged. You know, it's said when you have a volunteer organization that there are two kinds of volunteers. And they gave me this training when I was learning ministerial craft. And you guys probably got it recently too. They said there are two kinds of people. They're detail-oriented people and they're big picture people. Now this is a gross oversimplification, but this is how it's taught, all right? Detail-oriented people and big picture visionary people. And the worst thing you can do is give one of them the other one's job. If you give the visionary person, they say, how can I help? And you say, here, sit at this table and stuff these envelopes. They'll lose their mind. And I think we could see how that would be so. But just as true is if you have the person who loves to have a pile of stuffed envelopes, wet with spit, stacking up next to them, where they can say it, and they can reach over and they can straighten out that pile and number it, and they see it, and they love that, and you go to them and you say, now, your task is to strategize a whole new vision for how this is all going to work. That'll make them just as miserable as it would the other. Now, I say this is a gross oversimplification because there are not simply two types of people. But there are two poles of approach to every task, you see. In other words, the person who's a visionary in one area is highly detail-oriented in another. And once in a while you get somebody, this is tough. This is like getting two positive ends of a magnet to meet. Once in a while you get somebody who can do both. And that's really, really rare. And they're pretty much your geniuses in the field. A Da Vinci comes to mind, who had a big vision, but also could sit down and do the math, you know. So, if that's true, and in a given task, you want to isolate the task set and the skill set that is most appropriate to the individual, well, that's something to pray about. That's something to take into treatment of what is it about this situation? Where in this situation can I be of maximum impact? I'm itching for a big visionary position in life. Where can I find that? Is it musically? Is it artistically? Is it in a literary theme or something? Or I need something to just get done so that I can see it done. I need a measurable outcome. The other thing they taught us when we were coming up in ministry back in, we used to say '06. Anymore, that's only 14 years ago, but you get the idea. So back in the 80s. The other thing they taught us was, as a minister, you're going to have all kinds of unmeasurable outcomes. Soft, unmeasurable outcomes. For example, you give a talk, did it help anybody? You had no idea. Somebody may once in a while come and tell you, but for the most part, they won't. You teach a class, did it do any good? You don't know. So you look at it and you say, did I do my best? Was I prepared? Was I glib enough? Did I pay attention? Did I listen? Did I care? You check all this stuff off, but you don't really know. And then you go through the cycle of the year, and it's Christmas again, and then it's Easter, and then it's this, and whatever liturgical year you follow. And how do you rate, was this a better or worse Christmas? Well, the only place where a lot of clergy can evaluate this, frankly, is in numbers, in terms of attendance, in terms of money. And they say if you do that, you'll make yourself crazy, because somebody will always have more attendance and more money than you, even if you're the Pope. All right? Somebody's going to outdo you. So you make yourself crazy doing that. So what do they tell you? They say find something within, or preferably outside the ministry, where you can manifest measurable outcomes. Like go fishing, like play golf. And what's your handicap? Like find some kind of a hobby. When you learn to read music, you had a measurable outcome there. Now it's a matter of having the music that you read match your interpretation of it, your practice of it, and how you interpret the phrases and the particular nuances of that music. And we groove to it. You're happier with it in a way that the untrained ear cannot understand, or the person not looking over your shoulder cannot understand. So you have a measurable outcome for yourself in terms of your own self-satisfaction. But at the same time, to have something that's absolutely objective, that you can say, yes, I did this thing. To treat to know that you're in the right place at the right time, doing the particular good that you came here to do, is the message really of all of Trower's books. And again, that the creative process is happening through you. You don't have to start it. You just reveal it, you participate with it, you cooperate with it, you relax into it. You let the thing take you on a wild ride now and then. You let it inspire you in ways you hadn't expected. You pick up talents and affinities you didn't know were yours to do. And suddenly life is an adventure, and suddenly life is never ending, because you've taken off the blinders, no longer with the tunnel vision of like the racehorse driven ahead. Now you got this wide vista of possibilities and things that you could do. And you realize it's inexhaustible. All you do will never exhaust the possibilities of all there is to do. And now you realize too that everything you do, because of the holographic nature of all of this, affects everyone else in it. Affects generations yet to come. When I first encountered Trower, as Garrison Keillor says, I had to sit down. I started reading Trower, I had to, whoa, where has this been up to this stage in my life? Well, it had been sitting there waiting for me to pick it up. When you pick up this sort of information, you realize it's no mistake, it's no accident. This crosses my field of vision. Because now that I know this, I can't unknow it. It has to be employed. It has to be used. So in the week to come, or the few days to come before Sunday, if you attend Sundays too, I invite you to consider that there is some great task awaiting you, seeking you out. That's the whole theme this month. The creative process in you, Something is seeking you out right now. I promise you it is. Because nothing happens by accident, and no time really is wasted. No effort is wasted. You made your way tonight to this place. You came through the rain and whatever weather. I've been here all afternoon, so I don't know what it's been doing, but you exerted yourself enough to come here to hear this. There would be no reason for that were it not for what lays next in your life. Some great thing for you to do. Ask the deepest part of you. Point me in the right direction with it, and it will do that. Let's know together now there is one life, one power, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere, manifesting everywhere, radiant on this sweet night, this cool and breezy night where just a touch of winter has come back to remind us that she's not done with us just yet. Just a few weeks now till the equinox. And just a few days now till the worm moon or crust moon, the super moon on the 9th, where we'll hover so close to Earth and be enlarged by our atmosphere that we will feel as though we can reach out and touch that. We join our ancient ancestors who felt the same and who had far less information to defeat the idea. They didn't know how far away it was. No one had walked on it yet. To them it was new every time. It was virgin territory. Well, so for us it can be as well. So for us can the night sky be, and Venus that's been hovering near the tip of the waxing crescent. So for us there can be magic in every corner, around every turn. What is mine to do generally, and what is mine to do in each particular situation in my life is now revealing itself to me easily, clearly, and in plain English. And I know this for each one within the sound of my voice as well. Spirit works by the short ways, by the path of least resistance. And so all things are coming together for good in this moment to manifest something that has never been known in the history of our species. What exactly that is remains to be seen. That it is a slam dunk certainty. And that we are all involved with it is no less certain, because now we've heard of it. And the idea will not leave us alone. For this knowing and its manifestation in form everywhere we turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.